Well, hey folks, I'm Josh, and welcome back to the space right behind my shop. So today's episode of SAK Whittling, we are going to be making, some variety of these little monster guys. They're fairly easy to make, but we're going to try to do it in a little bit bigger piece of wood today, so, cross our fingers that works out. What you're going to need to make them is, of course, your kit of some variety involving a whittling knife, a Swiss Army knife, and some wedges. So you're going to need wedges because we're going to be splitting this big piece of wood up here. If you don't want to split with your Swiss Army knife, you would be obviously much better off splitting with something like an axe or something like that. But we're going to do it with the knife. And you're going to want to find a piece of wood that is big enough that you're going to have a section big enough to make one of these little guys that does not involve the pith. So if you look at this guy, he has the pith in his top, and you can see he has cracked. And I was really just experimenting. I wasn't overly concerned about that when I was making him. So anything that you're going to want to last, you're probably going to want to try to get split out of a piece of wood so that there isn't a pith involved. So you can see on this guy, the pith of this piece was right here, and he has dried and he's had no issues. So nothing terribly complicated to make one of these guys, but we're gonna go through the steps of how I made them, and hopefully you enjoy it. So the first thing we need is a piece of wood. Now you could go with any size piece of wood that's big enough that you can hang on to do this. This piece of wood that's about maybe 2 inches across. You could do this with something smaller. This is aggressive probably, but we're going to see if we can get this to work. And we're going to split it right here along this pith and then make the biggest square we can over here on this side, because I want my little guys to be kind of square when you're looking at them from the top. And so that's going to be what we're going to try to start with. This is a piece of buckthorn that I just cut recently, and I think you could probably use any type of wood that's hard enough to hold up to this. So we're going to give this a go. If you don't have access to wood, you could probably do this with like a hardware store dowel. You'd want like at least a 1-inch piece or something like that. And then this piece is, I don't know, maybe 5 inches or so, 4 or 5 inches. And the reason you want it to be longer, yes, this guy's going to be shorter, but when you're working on him, you need enough to hold on to, because it's really hard to hold on to something this small while you're cutting and sawing and stuff. So first thing to do is to split this down. So if you haven't watched the video on splitting a log or a small log, like a stick, big stick, with your Swiss Army knife, you should probably do that. Or if you have done it before, then you're probably fine. But if you've never done this before, be careful. You hold your knife at a 90, and we're going to try to go right here and see if we can get this to split. So I got that to split. It wasn't very clean. I didn't realize there was this down here, and my wedges took a beating. I probably went a little big. This is probably bigger than I should have tried to do. Also, if you look really close, I warped the edge on my knife a little bit. You can see the way the light hits that edge right there. I definitely bent this edge. So probably shouldn't try to split a log of this size when it's wet with a Swiss Army knife like that, but learn from my craziness. Another method of splitting a log of this size with a Swiss Army knife, if you want to, at least if you have wedges around, is you can get your saw out and put a saw line across. I would have put a saw line across like right here, partway down, which it's tricky to saw into the end grain with the Swiss Army knife saw, but it does work. It's just a little bit slow. So give yourself a saw line about as deep as the saw or so, and then you can pull your saw out. Then you can get your wedges out and put them into the groove made by the saw and split it with the wedges that way. So don't bend your blade. Anyway, we're going to try to clean this up a little bit and see if we can get it to be a little more square. I mean, the blade's already bent, so see how it goes. This is getting pretty sloppy. This knot down here is really messing things up. I didn't realize it was that bad. We're gonna have to cut, I think, to get rid of that knot. So let's do that now. Last split, here we go. Well, that was moderately ridiculous, so don't go that big. It's gonna not be fun, and you may damage your blade like I did. Now we got our kind of rough square hogged out here, and it went into here a little bit more than I would have liked. Might just have to clean this up with the knife, so we're gonna do that right now. Probably really dulls the blade to try to split with that as well, so you really turn it into a splitting tool and not much of a cutting tool if you do that very much, I'm sure. So bear that in mind. If you have an axe, it's probably better to split with an axe or a hatchet than it is to try to split with your knife. But I mean, you know, that's the point of these videos. Let's see how far we can take a Swiss Army knife. So we did it. My cheerleaders here. We're just trying to kind of clean this up a little bit and get the shape a little bit more consistent along the whole length. So the way this is made, this is going to be his feet. He's going to kind of sit like this. We're going to cut here and saw here to create his little feet like that. And so it doesn't have to be as nice up here at the top end because we're going to saw him off. For now, I think we're going to kind of work with the rest of this up here. Might have to clean that up when we're done. So it is time to think about this shape down here. I want that to be pretty close to square. This line here, I want that to be straight. Now it's time to give him some feet. And I want this guy to have 4 feet. You could just do 2, and if you're going to do that, you know, pick your way and then just put a line and saw through here. And we're going to remove this in here. But I want to have 4, so I'm also going to saw here and here. Here we go. And I'm okay with it having a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a twist to it, because what's happening is because we split it, at least for the most part, it followed the grain, and so it's got a little bit of a curve, and I don't know, it's a little bit more of an organic feel. It's still got some nice square edges, but it still has a little, I don't know, a little weirdness to it. So if you look at this guy, he kind of follows the grain a little. He's not exactly a rectangle by any means, but I don't know. I think that adds character, but you do what works. So now we're going to get the saw out and cut and give him feet. End grain sawing with a Swiss Army saw is not a it's not a real easy or clean process, but it allows you to kind of move around and hog out some wood. You just kind of, you know, you make a cut on one side and then a cut on the other side, and then you can kind of turn the saw on an angle and get the wood that's in the middle out. If you were making a smaller guy, you would not probably need to do that. You could probably just make one cut and that would be enough. But I figured this one needed a little more. So let's clean up these a little bit. All right, so that's cleaned up a bit. We could spend a little more time and make it a little cleaner, but sandpaper would really take it to a whole nother level, but we're not going to use sandpaper. You could, of course, but I'm sticking to just the Swiss Army knife. And I'm not worried about a little bit of roughness in the bottom. You're really not going to see it. I'm going to call that good enough. And the next thing to do is to decide where's the front. So on mine, I think I'm going to make the front be right here. And so that means we got to give him a mouth. And you could do all kinds of different things, of course. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the saw and make a cut kind of at an upward angle here. So I'm going to try to envision what this is going to look like. So I think we're going to, you know, kind of cut him off here when we get to that point. So that's going to be the top. I want to go about like right there. And then his eyes will be like right there. Okay, so let's do that. Saw time. So to get this to go in at an angle is a little tricky. You start going straight down, and then once you get established, you can angle your saw whichever way you want. Let's see if we can get at a little bit of an angle here. So now it's time for the eyes. And you can do, you know, you can do round eyes, you can do little stop cuts that kind of go up like that. So I'm gonna just do a couple practice eyes on this piece that I split off and just smoothed out here. So if you just want to do this kind of eye, like a stop cut type thing, you just give yourself a nice stop, and then if you want them to angle up or down, you just angle your knife from your cut, and then so that's one kind of way that I find that you can make something that looks I like. The other thing I think that works, you use the awl and you kind of get started on a hole. And you can of course go as deep as you want and use the awl to do that. But I think the awl makes for dirty holes. It's not the best. So if you got a Phillips screwdriver, you can actually, once you get the hole started, just kind of ream it out a little bit with the screwdriver, and it works surprisingly well. I think you just have to go clean it up a little bit. You're just kind of mashing the grain, but it's not too bad. Then you just have to go clean it up a little bit with the knife. You know, play around with what you like as far as eyes go. So I think I'm going to go for the rounder eyes on this guy. I'm going to think about my placement a little bit more here. I think we're going to go kind of close set eyes right about here. So that means get the center with the awl. And then while I got the awl out, I'm going to go ahead and get this one started too. Now we're going to clean that up a little bit. Alright, now let's see what happens if we get the screwdriver out here. Looking pretty good. I'm feeling good about cutting him off now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well, we got the top off of there, but it didn't make a very straight cut, so I'm just going to clean that up a little bit if I can. Well, there he is. One silly looking little block monster. Now, probably learned a few things doing this. One of them is that you probably shouldn't try to split a wet piece of wood that big with a Swiss Army knife. That was probably 2 inches or more across in diameter, and also rather green still, so hard to split. And like I mentioned, I did dent my knife a little bit. So probably if you're going to split the wood with a Swiss Army knife, you probably want to try to stay under, like something that's like maybe about that big, about an inch and a half or so. Then you don't as much run the risk of hurting your knife. I mean, you know, trying to split anything with a Swiss Army knife is probably pushing it regardless. So, you know, be careful doing that, and if you can, use some other tool. Use an axe or something like that. But you know, for the purposes of pushing this thing to the limits, I think we found the limit when we split this guy out. Even if you don't want to split out the piece of wood and you don't mind a few cracks or checks in your little guys, it's really not a big deal to use a whole stick, because I mean, he's got a little crack in it, but it's, I don't know, character.
whatever. So this guy's fun. And you can make them all different sizes and use different eyes, and you can get a lot of expression out of a little guy with just a few simple cuts. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you next time. Thanks a bunch. Have a good one.